More provincial leaders are calling on the federal government to pause the carbon tax increase set to kick in next month. In a letter to the Prime Minister, Liberal Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Andrew Furey writes this: I respectfully request that you consider pausing the implementation of the April 1st carbon tax increase at least until inflation stabilizes, interest rates lower, and related economic pressure on the cost of living sufficiently cool.
It's a significant inflationary pressure point. And with respect to the motives and the incentive behind the carbon tax, we just don't think it's the right instrument at this time.
Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston wrote his own letter to the Prime Minister saying your carbon tax is not the way to accomplish the goals of reducing emissions and increasing renewable energy, and it is not in the best interest of Nova Scotians. Now, those letters follow a similar plea from PEI's Premier Dennis King on Friday. So will Ottawa listen?
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In regards to today's story, we're going to be talking about none other than the carbon tax. Because as most people know, come April 1st, it's expected to go up another 23%. Now, as you heard from our good friend David Cochrane at the beginning there, a Liberal Premier is now joining the ranks of other Conservative Premiers, calling for a pause on the carbon tax. And this comes shortly after we heard Saskatchewan flat out say they weren't paying the carbon tax, the home heating portion of the carbon tax. And just a few days ago, we had the Premier of Ontario coming out and saying this.
Hi, Premier. Siobhan Morris from CTV News.
Hi, Siobhan.
I'm wondering if Ontario would entertain doing something similar to what Saskatchewan is doing, not collecting or passing on the carbon tax collected on home heating.
Well, we can't do that. They own the utility, so they can do it. We can't, because our utility suppliers are private. We do have shares in obviously Hydro One, but Enbridge and other utility companies are private, so we can't do it. But good luck to my friend Scott Moe. You know, the carbon tax is the worst tax you could ever put on the backs of people, and I can't believe the federal government is actually going to hike the gas tax by 23%. Like, what don't you get? I've told them over and over again, the number one issue with people is affordability, affordable homes, affordable groceries, and affordable gas. And what drives up the inflation is energy cost. When you're gouging people at the pumps, they're already taking, what, 17.5 cents compared to where we reduced it by 10.7 cents. Guys, wake up, smell the coffee. Like, what don't you understand? Cancel this carbon tax, put it on hold, do whatever, and if you don't, the people of Canada are going to annihilate you when the election comes up. Simple as that.
Now, I'm not a huge Doug Ford fan myself, but I can't deny what he's saying isn't true, especially when we look at all the polls that have been conducted recently, saying that they would basically be annihilated if an election was held today or sometime soon. But the big story is, again, a Liberal Premier has now put out a letter to Justin requesting a pause. Now, he even posted his letter on his own page, which, if you want to take a look, it's a 2-page kind of thing. And even Doug Ford retweeted this, saying that he couldn't agree more with that Premier. People across Canada are hurting right now from the high cost of living. The federal government needs to put a stop on the carbon tax. As I mentioned, this is all kind of snowballing since Saskatchewan decided that they were no longer paying the home heating portion of the carbon tax. But even earlier in January, we had Wab Kinew from Manitoba coming out and saying that there was a strong case to review the carbon price in his own province. So this has been coming down the pipeline. Not a lot of people are happy with this whole carbon tax issue. And even though that a lot of people are talking about this Liberal Premier asking for a pause, that's the other side that they're complaining about, is that it's only asking for a pause, not an indefinite end to it, not scrapping it, or, you know, as Pierre says, axing the tax or spiking the hike, whatever catchphrase you want to use. But from that clip earlier you saw of David Cochrane, he had a panel on, and he actually asked a pretty good question, in my opinion, in regards to the optics and the understanding of this, and if there's any way to recover for the Liberal government on this exact thing.
This whole notion, the idea of the rebate, has never penetrated. It's not part of the conversation from coast to coast. And that is such a huge challenge for the Liberals. They attempted a rebrand a month ago to start calling it a rebate. I think it was called an incentive program before. But in both cases, it's so hard for people to understand. They're feeling it in their pocketbooks, and it's really easy for the Conservatives to make a really meaningful argument on this one. I think it's a really simple argument to make, and the provinces have all seen how effective that argument can be, and they've taken it up in their home provinces. And the federal government has been on their back foot on this since day one.
Well, can I just interrupt because I want to ask one quick question. Like the rebate is one thing, right? And you can whether people feel it and whether it's branding or not, but the effectiveness of the policy is increasingly becoming a question, right? Like the clean steel stuff they've done with Algoma, you can say this investment takes this amount of emissions out of the atmosphere on an annual permanent basis. The same with electrification of cars and switching off, different fuel sources. Have they made the case that this is even effective? Because I don't know how to find a catalog of what the consumer price does in terms of reducing emissions. You know what I mean?
And I do know what he means, because in a previous video, we played even a clip where Stephen Guilbeault had admitted that they don't track the emissions, so they don't actually know what the pricing does for that.
Mr. Speaker, last week the Environment Minister revealed the truth about the carbon tax. I asked how many emissions are directly reduced from the carbon tax in an order paper question. This minister's response was, and I quote, "The government does not measure the annual amount of emissions that are directly reduced by federal carbon pricing." Wow. End quote. These are his words, not mine.
And I think if we want to go down that path of listening to Guilbeault and the words that he says, let's go back in time when he actually says we shouldn't trust the Liberal government.
Greenpeace is climbing the world's tallest building today to tell the world not to be fooled by the Liberal government. As the talk on climate change starts, we want to tell the world that the Bush and Canadian administration are out to kill the Kyoto Protocol.
Now, as old as people might point out that clip is, it is quite hilarious that he says don't be fooled by the Liberal government, yet now is part of the Liberal government himself. But just a few days ago, he actually was in New Brunswick having a talk about climate change and the carbon tax and changing home heating. And when he was questioned by one of the reporters about if this actually was enough, this $20 million that they were going to give, he flat out said no, and they're going to obviously need more than this.
Again, it is built into the federal system that the proceeds of pollution pricing are returned, dollar for dollar, to the province or territory where they are collected. And today, I'm happy to announce that the Government of Canada is making good on its commitment to return over $20 million of carbon pricing proceeds to New Brunswick through the Future Electricity Fund.
I was looking at some of the numbers NB Power has already realized with their home energy savings program, enhanced energy savings program. I think it's something like 6,000. They're hoping to get 10,000 done by the end of this year. It's laudable, but it's still a very small percentage of overall households. So, this sounds like it's a lot of money, 20 million, but realistically, will it get us where we need to be with reducing energy waste in households in New Brunswick?
The short answer to your question is no. And this is one of many announcements to come in New Brunswick as well as in other Atlantic provinces to ensure that we can help more homeowners reach these goals of energy efficiency. So I can't comment on the specific numbers from NB Power, but clearly we need to do more, and we are in fact doing more, and they will, as I said, there will be many more announcements, whether it's from my department, Natural Resources Canada also has more announcement to come. We need to do more. I agree with you 100%.
Now, if I take his answer to that question as no, we need to do a lot more, especially with 20 million, and we take the statement from the House earlier where he says that they don't even track the emissions, you put them together, we get to what is the point of all this? Because earlier in this statement, he said, well, the federal government gives dollar for dollar back for pollution to each province. Well, what's the point of that? Why are you collecting it if you're just going to give back the same amount? How about you don't collect it and then you don't have to worry about all this? But as I mentioned, this whole speech was about home heating and getting people off oil furnaces and using oil as home heating. However, if you look at the bare minimum, say electric vehicles, across the country, all different provinces, majority of people say no, we're not going to be there even by 2035 as they estimate. Maybe hybrid vehicles, but electric, no way.
It feels ambitious, and it feels ambitious because we're so different from the European countries. We've got so much space to cover, so much infrastructure, and whatever. Having said that, we can move toward it, definitely, and maybe faster than we are, but I think it might be a little bit ambitious.
I don't believe so. But it could be a possibility if money was put towards that.
I'm not sure that they can be phased out completely. I think it's a good goal for our country to work towards. Solely battery-powered vehicles are maybe not a feasible option for the country as a whole. We have an option to look at. There's good hybrid vehicles on the market right now.
I think it would probably take longer than that. That's only like a bit over 10 years, so I think it would be good, beneficial, but I don't think it would happen that soon.
I mean, I drive an electric car, full disclosure, and I know that we have a long way to go with the infrastructure to support electric vehicles, and that's 11 years away. Probably not. I'd like to think that we could, but probably not.
I don't think they can be phased out fully. I'm a firm believer in the hybrid model. You can get really great mileage out of a hybrid. We're seeing a lot of issues with the pure electric.
They're going to have to increase the infrastructure for charging electric vehicles, and they're going to have to take another look, I think, at electric vehicles and problems they've had and sort that out.
That does seem a little bit unrealistic. If we had an interim goal to get partway there, it probably would make a lot more sense. So it's like, it almost seems like an aspirational goal that the government knows that we're not going to reach. So they're asking for more than they know that they're going to get, would be my impression of it.
Now, what that gentleman at the end said has never been more true, because even during this press conference, Guilbeault basically admitted that the carbon tax was the proverbial boot on your neck via the government.
The very purpose of carbon pricing is to incentivize new behaviors, either by businesses or individuals and citizens.
And we're sadly starting to see these types of practices more and more. Just recently, we had the online harms bill that they're trying to push forward. Prior to that, we have platforms that will either deplatform you or block you or suppress you depending on what you talk about. YouTube does the same thing. Content creators have to curb their content because if they talk about a touchy subject or something that YouTube doesn't like, then you lose ad revenue, you lose viewers, your videos are suppressed, they don't get reached out to people. So it's been happening for a while now. But as always, this is just my opinion. Love to hear from you guys. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.